Alright, so when you think of who the strongest character in all of Disney is, who's the first person that pops in your head? For me, I think there's actually not really a contest. I'm pretty sure that the answer is Jafar. Why? Because he literally says he wants to be the most powerful being in the entire universe, and he has the power to shape the universe, create the universe, so he has unlimited cosmic power, just in a itty-bitty living space. So then who is second best? Well, probably the genie, because he's who Jafar based his powers off of, and probably can do almost the same things. But number 3. That one was a little bit harder to come across, but I believe I have an answer, and it might surprise you to figure out who it is. So, do you have a minute to talk about who the third strongest Disney character of all time is? Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to another episode of Matt's Minutes. So, as you can see behind me, we have the Disney wall, meaning we must have another Disney-themed episode. And we do. So, as I was saying, I believe that the third most strongest character in all of Disney is actually Stitch. That might come as a little bit of a shock, but hear me out. He's not just all cute and cuddly. He's got quite a number of things going for him that I think actually make him really, really strong. So, without any further ado, let's talk about his powers and abilities. So in my research for this episode, I actually found out that Stitch has a lot more abilities than what I thought at first. Some of them might include being theoretically bulletproof. It's not exactly confirmed whether or not he is or is not bulletproof, but it is confirmed that he caught a plasma blast and threw it back. So, if he can catch a blast of plasma, theoretically he could probably catch bullets as well. It is confirmed that he is fireproof, as he drove a gas truck into a volcano and it blew up and he was completely and utterly unscathed. And it says in the movie that he's fireproof. So, another one in his favor is he is fireproof. He also has the ability to think as fast, if not faster, than a supercomputer. So, not only is he really intelligent, but he can solve problems really, really quickly. And while we do see these in the movie, I feel like it's pretty underrated, because they just kind of skip over it most of the time. And there are scenes where he's able to figure out the solution to problems really, really quickly, so it is shown, but I think they could have done a better job of emphasizing just how smart and how quick Stitch actually is. Some of his lesser known abilities include that he has a wide range of visions, so he can see in the normal spectrum. He can also has night vision, infrared, and X-ray vision already built into him, which is pretty cool. He's also really, really strong. He can lift up to 3,000 times his own weight, which is amazing and a lot of weight. The downside is, he cannot pick up any more than 3,000 times his weight. That's his absolute limit. And they make a couple of jokes of this, of like him lifting exactly 3,000 times his own weight, and then a feather falls on and then he drops the whole thing. So it really is exactly 3,000 times his own weight. Whew! We're still not done. So I'm just going to summarize the last of his abilities really quickly. He has 4 arms, but can also retract them to only have 2 if he wants. He is also trained in martial arts, has a flexible skeleton, can climb on virtually any surface, and a potential one that may be given to him is that he is potentially immortal. Now, that's not 100% confirmed, but he doesn't really seem to age, so possibly? Anyway, those are all of his powers and abilities. So what I'm going to do now is actually go through his weakness, which is pretty simple: water. He was designed to have such a weakness, and what's cool about it is that Stitch it's not because he can't breathe in water. He can. It's pretty much confirmed that he can breathe in water and in space. Not 100%, but based off the evidence that I've seen, I think he can. The problem is he's too dense to float, so he just sinks to the bottom of whatever water surface that he's in. And this was an intentional design by his creator so that Stitch wouldn't be too powerful and that he could, have some control over this super powerful being. So, just a thought. But yes, that is Stitch's main weakness. So, now that we've covered his powers and abilities, let's talk about who could actually stand a chance of fighting him or defeating him. So what I've kind of done is I've brought up a couple of people that I thought might stand a chance if they are dropped into a fight with Stitch with neither one of them having any time to plan. I think that's the most fair, as if given time to plan with Stitch's, ability to think faster than a supercomputer, he probably stands a better chance with fighting just about anyone if given prep time. So, we're just going to drop them into the fight cold. Speaking of cold, the first contestant is Elsa. So, in a fight between Elsa and Stitch, where both of them are dropped into the fight cold, pun intended, I think there's no contest. I think Elsa might have been a good competitor because of ice, and ice is made out of water, but she can't sink Stitch. Unless they're fighting on a frozen lake, which even then I think there's still enough frozen ice around for Stitch to kind of jump around. Not to mention, he can dodge most of her attacks, and he has an inflexible skeleton to help him move around any icicles that she might throw at him. I really don't think there's much of a contest. Stitch can dodge whatever she throws and counter, and yeah, I just think all she can really do is buy herself some time. But the more time she buys, the faster Stitch is thinking and formulating a better strategy. So really, even time isn't in her favor. So for that reason, in the round of Stitch versus Elsa, I think the winner is clearly Stitch. If you think it's Elsa, please leave a comment in the comment section down below explaining why, but in my opinion, it's Stitch. The next contender on our list is Hercules, because he's so strong that he might actually be a little bit stronger than Stitch. He probably is, given that he has thrown a tornado. But could he actually hurt Stitch, is my question. Because yes, Hercules is strong, and he's trained by Phil in weapons combat, and I assume hand-to-hand combat, though he doesn't really use a lot of anything other than a brawler stance in Hercules, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he is trained somewhat in hand-to-hand combat. So is Stitch, and Stitch is a much harder target to hit. Number one. Number two, Hercules really isn't the brightest of people, and he's been manipulated at least once or twice in his own movie, and I think Stitch could easily take advantage of that. So I think if Hercules could land a few good blows, but I think overall Stitch would be able to take him on. So in the round of Stitch versus Hercules, I gotta give it to Stitch. If you think it should be Hercules, let me know in the comment section down below why you think Hercules should win. I think Stitch has got this one in the bag. The next one is Maui. This one is a little bit situational, assuming that they are fighting on Maui's home turf. Because while neither one of them can do super well in water, because it is confirmed Maui can't float for some reason, I guess. I don't know. Go listen to Thank You. He says it in the song. I feel like he stands a decent chance on his own turf, because he could draw Stitch into the water somehow by turning into a whale and bringing the water to Stitch, or by using a canoe, as he is a great. What is it? What do they call people that ride canoes like that? Wayfinder. That's what they're called in the movie. Let's go with that. He's a good wayfinder. on a canoe. So I think he has more points going for him. Plus, he can transform into a lot of animals, which could be a really wild card, and perhaps he could turn into something so big Stitch couldn't lift him up. But we've seen Stitch get crushed by something that's over 3,000 times his strength and survive no problem. So I don't know if that would be enough. In addition, this is assuming that we're fighting on Maui's home turf. If it's a neutral environment with no water, I don't think there's much of a contest, because even though Maui can shapeshift into different animals, he's fairly predictable with the animals that he chooses. And I think Stitch would pick up on that pattern and be able to kind of adapt his strategy as needed. In addition, without water, there's not much for Maui to really do to affect Stitch, versus there's plenty of things Stitch could do. Now let's go back to a water fight. I don't think even bringing Stitch out on a canoe would be super detrimental, as he's not afraid of water anymore. He surfs. So I don't think that would be really a problem for Stitch. So while this one is the closest one so far, in the fight between Stitch and Maui, I still have to give it to Stitch. If you think it's Maui, please leave a comment down below explaining why, but again, it's closer, but I just feel Stitch could win this one. Alright, I have saved the best for last. There is one person that I feel could fight Stitch and give him a run for his money, and that is King Triton. This man has a trident that can basically command the sea. Commanding Stitch's weakness is a pretty big deal. Not to mention he has a ton of other powers, but his trident is pretty limited if you're not a merfolk. It does have a lot of effect on merfolk, but on humans and other things like that, it doesn't really do much. So it's fair to reason that it wouldn't be able to do anything on an alien either. So, but in terms of controlling the sea, that's a pretty useful power. And we've seen Ursula use it to literally create a giant whirlpool, so it is confirmed that it can do a lot with the sea. That might just be enough to take Stitch out. Though I'm not entirely sure it would kill him, because he can breathe underwater. So it might just incapacitate him at the bottom of the sea, which he might not be able to climb out of. So theoretically that could win, or he could win that way. The other side to that though is, the longer the fight goes on, the more Stitch can counter it. And the more Stitch understands his opponent's strengths and weaknesses, then the more likely he can use those against them. And the dude's just really strong and really hard to kill. So for that reason, I almost want to call this a tie. But I think I'm actually, in the fight between Stitch and King Triton, I'm actually going to give the edge slightly to King Triton, assuming they're in a water environment, because King Triton can't survive out of water. So it really wouldn't be fair not to. But if they weren't, Stitch would win this fight hands down. So maybe it is closer to call it a tie. Sure, it's a tie. Let's go with that. What do you guys think? Who wins this particular fight? Let me know in the comment section down below who you think would win this one, because I'm actually a little stumped. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I know this was a little bit longer of a video, but I think this was a cool topic, and Stitch is just one of those characters that's just always fun to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the newest content. We have a lot of cool stuff coming your way. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week.